I have booked my hotel. Thanks for asking. Hilariously, I will be covering back-to-back bowl games too. So, fun times. I had to cancel that bowl game in Birmingham. That hotel room. Give everybody a minute or two to join us. Thanks for jumping on, as always, folks. I did know UCF was playing in that bowl game already. I just wasn't sure if they had changed it or not because everything was in flux. But I had put something up about that earlier on my USF site. All right, everyone, welcome. Make sure you hit like, comment, and subscribe to our videos. It helps us build this stuff up. And we'll jump into questions. And right off the bat, we're jumping in with a strange one, so this will be interesting. The first question in today's Overreaction Sunday thread is about updates on the staff. I assume the football staff. Assume you mean if they hired a defensive coordinator, and all that stuff. And the answer is the same answer I gave last week. They will do all that stuff after signing day, after the bowl game. Unless someone takes another job, I don't expect any changes with staff prior to the bowl game. That's just how it is. Like, no one's making any staff changes before bowl games unless it's like something very demonstrative, like you've got to like fire this person or do something because it's negatively impacting your program. Maybe like Kirk Ferentz fires his son as the OC, something on that level of ineptitude. That's not where they're at right now. So no, I don't expect anything seismic to happen with the staff before the bowl game. Brett basically said today that in our media avail that he can't recall being on a staff where there wasn't a staff change. That's just the nature of the business, and to not be surprised if there were changes in not so many words. So there you go. Will there be any change or effect from the ACC commissioner and FSU statements on the College Football Playoff Committee, or is it strongly written words? He said something about it going to the expanded format. There'll still be these issues for 11, 12, 13, 14 ranked teams. Yeah. Georgia Tech might have gotten screwed in 2014 maybe, or some year like that. Like, yeah, there's always going to be somebody that gets screwed, just like there's teams that don't make the playoffs in Major League Baseball or these other things. And there have been plenty of times where Big 12 teams, or I think the Pac-12 has been stonewalled. This is the ACC turn. They're never going to stonewall the SEC. I told Tony, who works for me, covers Alabama from the jump, that if Alabama won, they would be in the playoffs, that there was no doubt in my mind. If they beat Georgia, they would be in the playoffs. The question to me was, would there be two playoff teams or one? So there you go. I think literally nothing changed. This reaffirmed everything I believe about this process. I'm not saying it's a good thing or I agree with the decision or any of that. I just think that there's a long history of teams getting screwed because someone gets hurt or whatever. And, Cincinnati went through it with Kenyon Martin, if you go back to the NCAA tournament back in the day. So when they, I think, should have been a 1 seed. So, this is not the first time someone's been screwed. Florida State, looked inept. That didn't help them on offense and made it easier for them to screw them. That's how I look at it. Do you read the same? Had Louisville not lost to a 6-6 Kentucky team, would they have been in the 12-team tournament if implemented this year? It seems like P5 with 2 losses has a good chance to make the tourney, even if not in a conference championship game. They were up 9 before losing Kentucky. I think Louisville's one of those teams. I said this at the beginning of the year. Louisville didn't play anybody, and their schedule was so soft that I thought they could win 10 games because I was just looking at the schedules, it's like Georgia Tech and one other team were their 2 hard games. And so it was not surprising to me how any of that unfolded. They had their own injuries. I think they haven't been the same since Thrash got hurt. And, Jack Plummer's a pretty limited dude, and he got exposed against teams with good pass rushers. So there we go. Had they not lost Kentucky, would that have changed things? I don't know. I think that it's not for me to say. I'm not here to litigate the playoffs. I'm not on a playoff committee. I don't really give a crap. It is what it is. So I will try to talk for I'm going to try to focus more on Georgia Tech related stuff because, quite frankly, I know you guys want to talk about the college football playoff. I just don't care that much about what's going on because this is the last year of this situation. So it is what it is. I could give a crap who's. What I'm happy about? I'm happy that Georgia's not in the playoffs. How about that? Because it makes all of you guys miserable, and it makes for misery covering Georgia Tech if Georgia's in the playoffs. That's what I like. And the guy, the flats or whatever, I'm about to mute you on the chat, so just give it up, dude. Zion Taylor was a top target we landed last year. Mildly surprised we didn't burn his red shirt. Any idea how much promise he's showing? Zion is dressed for most of the games this season. It was interesting that he hasn't gotten into the game, to play any meaningful snaps or anything, but he's been there. He's one of the outside receivers. He's definitely in the mix. So I think that I think he's definitely a guy they expect to play in the future. I think if I remember correctly, Zion got dinged up in camp a little bit. That set him behind a little bit, and they just haven't necessarily had they haven't played a lot of snaps where they've needed to play depth. They've been at 56. They've been in the 60, 70 snap range most games, some less than that even. You don't really need to dig into your third receiver at that point as much. WWE or college football was lesser a kid, but the chain problems at Ole Miss and the crap with Bama being in the college playoff over FSU, the line is not as clear as it once was. Yeah, I think this is just what's been gathering steam, right? I thought the SEC had a down year. I told the Bama fans this. I thought that the 4 playoff teams, the 4 teams I thought would be in the playoffs this year would probably lose to 3 of the 4 the last 2 years. I just don't think teams are as good. I think I think that is part of the portal process and part of some other stuff. So, and then there's the whole narrative that's being pushed on, the SEC's superior to X, Y, and Z, and it's been backed up because they've performed in the playoffs and in championship games. And until people start to knock them off, it's not going to change. And Michigan and Ohio State haven't really held up their end of the bargain of that. And other than Clemson, no one else really has either. So, until they start beating those teams, I think that's going to be what's going on. Is it normal for an OV to OV a non-committable offer kid this close to signing day, or is staff prepared to take his commitment prior to looking at him? Sometimes you bring a kid in from far away to get a look at them in person, to get them on campus, to gauge their interest. Maybe sometimes people have like financial issues and they can't come down here. Not everyone's like well enough off to like drop a couple $100 to come to Atlanta to come check out, a game weekend because their parents work or whatever. So I think you guys don't necessarily take into account like the things that are externally going on with some of these recruits and stuff. So I would just say that. And there's a joke, which was sort of funny. There's a lot of questions about the playoffs, and I get that y'all are pissed off about it, but like I don't really want to talk about it. Like I don't know what the solution is. I don't know. It's like politics, man. Like I can tell you what I think, but it doesn't mean anything, and a lot of people don't care what I think, just like I don't care what you think about politics. I'm not interested in reading your takes either about it. Like I think that it's just weird. This is interesting, though. How does Boo Carrigan remain the AD at NC State? How can he go to boosters and fundraise? Yeah, I don't know. Should the ACC punish NC State at every available opportunity? I don't know. Can they adjust the schedule so FSU plays NC State? I think that would be very funny. What can the ACC do? Unless you can prove collusion between ESPN and the playoff committee or something, which would be very difficult, or whoever, Disney or whatever outlet you want to, whoever's benefits from an SEC team being in a playoff that would manipulate the process behind the scenes. I don't know if there's anything you can do about it. How does GT favor against UCF? They're two terrible defensive teams and two teams that can score points in chunks. I would say take the over in this one. I haven't looked at what the line would be, but I would just say that it is an interesting matchup. I think that hopefully you guys are more fired up to play this game than against Troy. I think that was setting up to be a pretty monumental letdown. UCF's been up and down all year. They've played a couple good games. They've played some really horrendous ones too. So I don't know what to think. That's an inappropriate question for YouTube. How does the ACC keep looking down on Tech so much? They didn't. Georgia Tech finished 6-6, man. Like when you're 6-6, you get no benefit of the doubt. If you're 7-5, you don't get a benefit of the doubt. You win 8 games if you want to start dictating which bowl game you go to. There's no sense of entitlement at 6-6. Even with Duke with the lame duck coach and Syracuse firing their coach, or Duke with the interim coach, and you don't get a benefit of the doubt, man. When you got to beat Bowling Green and Boston College if you want to start dictating what bowl game you go to. Like this idea that Georgia Tech should be entitled to anything. They haven't been to a bowl game since 2018. Be happy you're going to a bowl game. Be happy your coach figured out a way to win enough games to go while trying to repiece and build his program up. I thought they did a hell of a job to get to a bowl game this year. So, like, be happy they're going. You believe this is a real sport when there's no cap rules, no tampering rules, and media runs the whole sport under the direction of 2 conferences, blah, blah, blah. So basically this is a question about like the haves and the have-nots, and is the system in danger? I think there's some danger with college football, but my feeling has always been this is going to go in cycles, and we're in a weird cycle where the NCAA has decided not to defend or to enforce portal stuff, and it's intentional. It's being done intentionally by the ACC. I mean, the NCAA, and they're trying to blow up and reset the sport. And I think we're in the middle of a lot of weird stuff that's going on. But here's the thing: at the end of the day, and this is what, if I'm in the SEC and Big Ten, scares the crap out of me. People are not interested in minor league sports. If you make it into that too much, people will lose interest. And so you've got to have rivalries. You've got to have like the things that make college sports great, which is underdog stories that anyone can beat anyone on any given day. You're still seeing that part of it. So as long as that's there, I think it's okay. But I think there's danger that this has become too big of a business and something does need to be done, like to fix it. Can we get into the top 12 next year? That's funny. If you won, if you win with the schedule Georgia Tech has, hell yeah, they'd be in the. If they win 9-10 games, yeah, they'd probably be in the top 12 with the schedule Georgia Tech has next year. Does the ACC think Georgia Tech is important for the conference, or are you pretty much an afterthought? It seems like the ACC has really never had our backs, especially when it comes to football. You got to win, and you have to have advocates for what you do. Like, what has Georgia Tech won since 2009? They've been to the ACC championship twice in football. They've won one basketball title. They've been to the tournament twice in that time. Like, that doesn't get you a lot. Like, you're not some power in this thing. This is not, you don't draw 100,000 fans. Like, understand where you are in terms of relativeness in the conference. Clemson, who's winning national championships, Florida State's won national championships. Both have been more successful in basketball. Like, those are the ones that are going to get the benefit of the doubt. You're not going to get that right now. What do you think Key's mindset is going into the bowl? Win at all costs, to get 7 wins, or get some young guys game reps and have fun with it? Brent, I guarantee you, especially now it's UCF, Brent wants to win the game and wants to win it convincingly. Like, he wants to beat them. Brent was pissed off that they lost the UCF game last year. Pissed. Was like in tears after the game. Was a mess. Like, he was mad that they lost a game they should have won. So, yeah. The conference is taking forever to figure out the last 4 slots. Whose outrage was holding up the process? My guess is it was Notre Dame, because they got shafted, which was kind of hilarious to see. But they had to scramble because they thought things were going to go a different way with Florida State. What grounds would FSU, the ACC, have for suing the NCAA? It sounds like it's not fair fit. It has about as much chance of being successful as FSU leaving the ACC last summer. I agree. I don't think there's much you can do. I don't think there's much legal grounds. I think if there were legal grounds, they would have filed a lawsuit today or threatened to or something. Can you take us through everything you know about change to the Birmingham Bowl league at 4 p.m. and the official Gasparilla announcement at 6? Brett McMurphy's wrong a lot. That's one of the things, and it was my fault. It wasn't my fault. I went with it because I heard the same thing from people within the program, but I don't know, like, everyone was just grasping to find out what was going on. So I don't know how much of that was like them glomming on to what was being reported by McMurphy and saying it was fact or not or whatever. Like, I don't really know what happened. I just know we were sitting in the room and like it was changing. And then the SID walked by, Mike Flynn, and goes, "It's not going to necessarily be what you think," to us. And then we all kind of looked at each other and were like, oh, this should get interesting. I felt like the more it was dragging on, something was going on. Because if it was just the Birmingham Bowl, they would have announced it like an hour earlier. Because they announced a couple of the other crappy bowls earlier. So that'll be real interesting. I think that the Gasparilla Bowl wanted an interesting game, and that's more interesting than I forget who UCF was supposed to play at first. It might have been Duke. Like, I think it's a better game if you got 2 P5 teams playing each other. How many of our 15 practices can we pack in with finals coming up and the bowl game close after that? Brent talked about this a little bit today. They will do the best they can. The other thing they can do, which Brent might consider doing, is they can practice after the bowl game as well. I actually have the wrong calendar up in my office. But you could go like after Christmas for a few days with the young guys if you want to. I don't know if they'll do that. they'll try to get in as many of them as they can. Most teams get in like 12 or 13. Most don't get the full 15 in unless you're playing a January 1st bowl game. Will FSU get their players championship rings if they beat the Dogs? Oh, I think this is 100% setting up for a UCF fake championship. No offense to UCF fans, but like a sort of something people will make fun of if they win that game somehow. I would like mortgage my house betting on Georgia to beat that game because I like Georgia's twos better than Florida State's twos, and I feel like that's what that game is going to turn into. But like, yeah, we'll see. What job offers did Paul Johnson get while at Georgia Tech and after he retired? It's a question for Paul, but off the top of my head, and these aren't necessarily offers. This is like pretty serious conversations or people trying to get him to take a job, but it never like got to the point of like full interviews and contract offers and things like that. But Auburn, North Carolina, NC State were the main ones. Auburn was like right after his first season here, I think. And then NC State came up a couple of different times. North Carolina was one of the more interesting ones as well. I'm gonna skip the thing about the lawsuits because I don't know enough about any of that stuff. Like someone wanted to know if the ACC could sue or something. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not married to one anymore. Like I don't care enough to even like put my own brain power to that. I got enough going on in my life. Have you heard the reasoning of the switch from Birmingham to Gasparilla? I read it was due to avoid Duke UCF rematch. I know that the Bulls generally do not want rematches, and that's been a pretty common thing that you barely ever see unless it's like a playoff type situation. And like it's pretty unusual to see like the same two teams play each other in that situation. So I guess the thought is that maybe you get a different bowl matchup. And then obviously Duke's not like super appealing. I think for Georgia Tech, it's better to get out of town and not just go to Birmingham where you're playing like Troy, this is their Super Bowl. You're going to play UCF and they're in the same boat you are, which is, they screwed up a couple of games they should have won and ended up with a season that was good and you got to bowl game, but probably not what like all of the fans were hoping for with the ability you showed in a couple of games, because UCF had a couple of good wins this year and kind of bounced back. Obviously the game against Oklahoma State where they just beat the tar out of them definitely comes to mind, and then the close game with at Oklahoma. So, they've shown their ability to play up and play down. There'll be a lot of points scored. I know that. Just playing two of the worst defensive teams playing each other. I know the players are putting out, like Kennard won't be available in the bowl game, but can any of the incoming portal transfers be available for the bowl game? We need all the help we can get, especially on defense. Do we have a DN coming in before the bowl game? I think the answer is effectively no. The only way you can play is if they are enrolled in school before the thing, and I think with transfers you can't play. With early enrollees, they can bowl practice, but I believe they are not eligible to play in the game. Will Miles Brooks' shoulder be healed up enough for the bowl game to be closer back to his 100%? I mean, I think his issue now is just more of like a lingering problem than I think you need more than a month to get better. He needs to work on strengthening his upper body. There's a Keelan Rutledge question. I don't know. Someone asked me to rank like impact of transfers. I don't know, man. It's hard to tell. How's the donor vibe changed with the basketball team? I don't know. I don't talk to donors like that much about like in the middle of the season. We'll see how he does the rest of the year. They beat Duke. We'll see if Duke's still good, man. Like That's one of those things. Like Georgia Tech beat Miami. Miami thought they were going to the playoffs in football, and suddenly they're like, eking out to go to the Pinstripe Bowl. Well, it's not like everyone's got to pump their brakes a little bit, like especially with rankings at the beginning of the season in basketball or football. Like no one has any idea. They're ranking based on how you played last year, the coach, and the roster you brought in, but that doesn't mean crap. And like how you play for the rest of the year. How does Saturday change your overall look for the year? It doesn't. When they play well, they're going to win, and when they're not going to play consistently every night because you have a young team, you have inexperienced guys, and you have guys who are inconsistent shooters. They're going to be up and down. Bai Nandongo's got to play really well because Bai is a freshman who needs to put all that weight on. He's a guy who should still be in high school. Like, are you going to count on him to carry you through a season playing like that every week? That I think is an unrealistic expectation. Nate George, same thing. Like, you have some young pieces. You're going to probably upset some people, and you're going to lose some games you shouldn't lose. That's what's going on. Without naming names or position, how many do we lose the portal between now and January? Don't know. I have put. I can give you my guess though on that one because I actually can come up with basically what I think their number is going to be. Which right now they have 17 spots, and I think they're going to have 27. So I think there's going to be like 10 more. The other thing is there's going to be some guys who leave after the spring. There's at least one that I know of for sure right now that's going to go probably through spring ball and then leave. So keep that in mind. If you're a head coach, what positions are you chasing in the portal? I have running back, 2 tight ends, O-line, strong side end, rush end, 2 linebackers, cornerback, 2 safeties. I'm assuming a decent amount of attrition. I think you're overestimating attrition a little bit. I do think they'll take a running back. I do agree that they would like 2 tight ends. I don't know if they'll get there. Obviously, they need help at right guard. They need help at defensive end, both spots. I do think with Sylvain back, assuming nothing happens with him, and Eddie Kelly and Josh Robinson, assuming Josh Robinson stays, they're good to go. Rush end, they need somebody. So I love Kyle Kennard, great dude. Kyle Kennard, if you take out the South Carolina State and the Wake Forest game, had 1 sack and 1 forced fumble and 1 fumble recovery. Those were his stats in the other 10 games. Like, they've got to get more consistent production. That position's killing them, and it's killed them the last few years, really since Jordan Dominic left. Like, they just don't get consistent game-to-game production out of that rush end spot. And there were so many times this year where, like, Kyle or Kevin Harris missed like a play, and they've got to figure out how to get more out of that spot. Otherwise, like, it's just killing them. The linebacker situation, yeah, they need 2 guys that can come in and play because you don't want to get into a situation where you're counting on Jacob Cruz or Ashton Heflin or Nakari Ashley to make this huge jump next year. You hope that they do, but you don't know. Cornerback, I think they need to take 2 corners out of the portal. I think that you have Amari Harvey and you have Rod Shelley back, but that's it. Like, in terms of veteran guys, Kenyatta, I guess, might be back, but he hasn't played a lot in the last few years. And then you have Stephen Jones that didn't play at all this year, so I feel like they need some help there. Well, I don't know if they need 2 safeties. That depends on what they're doing, but I can see them taking 2 safeties. I'm not watching any ESPN game other than Tech. I'd like the rest of the country to mimic. Okay, yeah. Any speculative opinion of the FSU decision has long-term impact on the ACC as a power conference? I've read a lot of dire comments about this being the relegation of the ACC, and have a hard time disagreeing. We heard the same freaking comments when I think it was Baylor got left out of the playoffs a few years ago. Like, it was the same crap. Like, and now people are talking about, well, let's go to the Big 12. It's not what you guys think it is, but it is sad that, like, Florida State got screwed. They shouldn't have. But I think, honestly, like, that's because Texas beat Bama head to head. If Texas and Alabama didn't play and Alabama's other loss was to LSU, right? Then, or whoever, Ole Miss, whatever, pick a team, or even pick a Big Ten team or whatever. I think Florida State would have been in, and Alabama would have been the fourth, and Texas would have been on the outside looking in. There's everything to do with the fact that Texas beat Alabama, that they had to put those two teams in. Any word on the young linebackers coming around in development? They like Jacob Cruz. They've liked Ashton Heflin before they kind of shut him down. And Nakari, those guys dressed out early in the year. We'll see how they do. Like, this is a little early for the developmental talk. I think it's more about the spring. Leo interested in playing in the bowl game. I wouldn't. I mean, right now he could get a medical year, an extra year from if he doesn't play at all this year, and has a pretty good case for it. So why would you play in a bowl game? What the hell is he gain from that? Like, I think you give that dude as much time as you can to heal up and try to get better. Like, that's crazy talk. Like, put him in the bowl game. It'd be one thing if you're playing for a national championship. That's crazy to play him in a bowl game. I expect the bowl game to be very high scoring and not a ton of defense, maybe decided by a turnover. UCF seems to have a good D-line, but lesser DB play. What are your way too early thoughts on the matchup? I agree. I think this is going to be a little bit of a track meet, probably, assuming the weather's good. I'm not, I've watched UCF a few times this year, a little bit less than normal. Gus usually comes up with a good plan. I mean, both teams have a long time to kind of think about this, so I'll be curious to see those. Opening scripts should be pretty interesting from Gus and from Buster Faulkner as well. So I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I feel like there are fewer holes to plug into our roster versus last year at this time. Yeah, I agree. We're forced to heavily rely on a bunch of transfers and probably not play the NIL game too much or spread it out across a lot more players. Yep. Do you agree with the sentiment? Yes. We're in a position to be more selective on transfers and focus on fewer positions like linebacker, rush end. Yes, running back. Yeah, like that's what they're going to do. Like the idea that Brent has is he wants to build his roster organically through high school kids and then backfill spots as needed where you missed or you lose a guy in the portal or something doesn't turn out or there's an injury or whatever. And his idea is not to go out and become Colorado and be the New York Mets of baseball, which is what Colorado did, and it doesn't work. It's hard to build, and that's why you see so many teams taking so long this season that were heavily into the portal to gel. That really, even like the cores of teams like Florida State were built around what they had internally in their program for a few years now. Like, it wasn't like Jordan Travis just walked in. They spent like 3 years grooming that dude. Like, those things take time, and I think that's going to be interesting to see what happens down the road with the portal. But Brent seems very confident about his plan, so we'll see how it unfolds. Yeah, I do think there's a lot of parallels. Someone asked about the kind of parallels between the UCF season and Georgia Tech's. Yeah, they had a rougher season in conference play, played a little bit weaker non-conference, well, a lot weaker non-conference schedule. I would say that both teams have played up and down all year, and it'll be interesting to see who plays up for the bowl game. I don't know how it's being reacted other than a few UCF trolls that hit me on Twitter in terms of like what their experience has been like. They do have like one of those like Twitter armies that's like Miami or LSU that's extremely obnoxious. So I wasn't excited about seeing the UCF Twitter army show up back in my mentions again. All right, let's jump into the chat questions. Two things from Justin. First, I joined on Black Friday sale. Cool. Thank you so much. Second, can you explain how the payouts work for bowl games should we win or lose? I believe there's no difference in the so, and someone maybe can correct me in the chat because I have not paid much attention to this because Georgia Tech hasn't been in a bowl game in a while, but I believe the money is just money. You don't get more for winning or losing. It's a bowl pool. They pool the money and then divide it out amongst the league. So it's a pool, and there's a bunch of bowl teams, which is why also, like, I was rebuffed when I had suggested to somebody that Syracuse might opt to not go to a bowl game. They were like, no, they'll go because the league wants the money for that. Now, what sucks is they lost money because Florida State wasn't in the playoffs. So that part sucks. But no, I think all the money you don't get, like, Georgia Tech doesn't get more money for winning the Gasparilla Bowl. They get the same payout, and then that money goes into a league pool and is divided out, as I recall. Now, that might change with whatever they're doing with the success sharing or whatever. I don't know what they call it. That would be my way of terming it for teams that do have good seasons, but I'm not sure. Do you think teams will rest players in conference championship games starting next year? That's very funny. Well, I guess that's a UGA joke. Yeah, it's very funny. Those two guys were like limping during the warm-ups of the SEC championship game. Clearly, they were just resting them for a week. The dudes were hurt, man. Like, you think Kirby Smart wanted to be in an 8-point game at Georgia Tech? Like, that dude wanted to win that game. He was trying to do what was best for his team. Like, I think playing a hurt Brock Bowers was probably would have been a poor decision for him. So he made the right decision. Haynes King, answer to your last question was great. Did he say any more? He was amused like I was, like watching that and the fake and all that stuff that was straight out of. He actually ran a little bit better than Jalen Milroe did, but like it was very funny because we all knew like going into that game that Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator from Alabama, was totally gonna look at the film from what Georgia Tech did because it was a great game plan, and really, like it was a hair away from being a much closer game. You hit a play here, you don't get a penalty there, and Eric Singleton's foot's in bounds on that one pass for the touchdown before the half, and it's a different game. And so, yeah, it's very funny because Georgia fans are acting like it was like cruise control and they had it, and they were fighting for their lives in that game. And, if Georgia Tech's run defense was a little bit better, it would have been really interesting because Carson Beck was not on in that game. Do any more of our guys enter the portal over we pretty much lost who are going to lose? No, there's going to be a bunch of dudes that go in the portal. Like tomorrow's when they can start going in. It'll start to get a little crazy then, and then we'll kind of see what happens. There's always going to be a surprise guy. Kyle Kennard was the first one that he went in without really telling anybody he was going in. No one to this point knows even what's going on there, so it'll be interesting. Is it smart for guys like Kyle to leave before playing in a bowl game? I figured it would be another opportunity to show what you can do. I think the concern there is you're going to get hurt in the bowl game, so you don't want to play in the bowl game. And that's the issue there. So I think you'll see guys not stick around for the bowl game. And I don't know what he would accomplish by playing, a bowl game on December 23rd. If he's trying to enroll in school in January somewhere else, like you're delaying yourself, putting yourself in a harder situation. And if you're a guy trying to solicit offers in a portal, then maybe that makes more sense for you. Did anyone notice the play that sealed the win for Alabama was our play, the fake toss out of the gun with QB run up the middle? We scored our first TD on Georgia with that play. Yeah, that was one of the real obvious ones that was very funny to me because they went hard they all like jumped out of their gaps to go after the pitch, like two linebackers, and there's a giant hole, and Jalen Milroe ran right through it, so it was very funny. I assume Tech being able to sell out their allotment of tickets will help bowl selection next year, right? I know you mentioned TV matchups, just know what takes priority. Selling tickets helps. People showing up in the stadium and having a good crowd for your home games when the bowl reps comes helps a lot more. And being a consistent winner helps a lot more, and that's where Georgia Tech's got to get back to. It was amazing. Blake, my photographer, was riding with me down to the Duke game, and we were sitting in the car, and he was pulling up some old photos, one of which I sent to Sid Griffin. I'll show you guys on the camera, which is kind of funny. It was from 2007. It just made me laugh seeing it. Let's see if it shows up on here or not. So that would be Said there jumping in to tackle somebody against Mississippi State in Atlanta. Anyways, when Blake pulled up those photos, he had a shot of the East stands, and it was just all packed full of Georgia Tech fans. It wasn't Mississippi State fans. And that's what they got to get back to, and it's going to take a lot of work. There's been a lot of damage done over the last 7 years, I would say. This goes beyond even Jeff, whose name should be redacted, and goes all the way to Paul Johnson. Like last few years when he didn't have the support or momentum to keep the program going the way it should have been, and the fans stopped coming as much, and they stopped getting as many special wins after the 16 season, and all those things snowballed on them. And so you've got to get people back in the stadium. That's all it takes, and that's what's going to take. How overrated is Duke basketball this year? It was a great win by Tech regardless. I have been thoroughly unimpressed with John Shire's coaching so far. My favorite moment in the game was in the second half. They go up. They're up 4, then the taunting, and he pulls his big man out, Kyle, Flipowski or whatever his name is, to give him a breather, and brought in Ryan Young, who's a transfer they got from Northwestern. And then he called a timeout immediately after Miles hit the 2 free throws. They come back down the court. He has to call timeout to put him back in. I was like, he had 3 timeouts left. I was like, what? And that left him with 2. I was like, what the hell are you doing? It's a 2-point game. Like, why are you burning a timeout here to take this dude out for 2 seconds when he was shooting a free throw and you can just let him stand on the line and catch his breath? Like, it's not like you gained anything, but that's just poor coaching. And I don't know what that's about, man. He is not Coach K. He's learning on the job, and it's a step down in coaching for them. We'll be interesting to see how he develops. Obviously, it took Coach K time to ramp up and become who he became, but I've just not been impressed with Shire at all. I talked about the FSU thing at the beginning. You asked if they will be motivated to play UGA and win the Orange Bowl and maybe prove why they should have been selected. I think they're going to push the UCF alternate national championship theory and try to get that and get a computer vote or something. So yeah, I would definitely, especially somehow Bama comes out of all this and wins the national championship, then Florida State will be all about hey, look, we did this. I just think there's no way in hell they're going to beat Georgia, even with Georgia's threes, man. They're going to have to figure out an offense, and I don't know what they're going to do, to figure out an offense that's good enough to hang with Georgia in that time span. They struggled to move the ball against Louisville. It was not great on defense. And Brock Glenn was terrible. Tate Rodemaker's a very limited quarterback. I understand, how everything unfolded and why Florida State got screwed, and it has a lot to do with them not having, the horses behind Jordan Travis. I don't understand why they didn't have if they had Mike Wright, who was the backup quarterback at Mississippi State this year, came from Vanderbilt, they would have easily probably made the playoffs. Just that guy, why do you have guys who aren't like Jordan Travis as your backup quarterback? This gets into my whole complaint about the name redacted era and how they had 5 different quarterbacks with different styles and didn't make any sense. And now you're getting away from that finally with Buster, where you have, Haynes King and Zach Pyron and Aaron Fallows coming in, and Graham Knowles was a little bit different, but you're getting back into this mold of having quarterbacks who are more similar to each other than different. I don't think Duke is overrated. It's December basketball, and we took advantage of a practically new team and head coach in Shire. Fair. I'm ready for a 12-team format. Makes the most sense to me. Also gives us a better shot at making it. This is the Schadenfreude, or whatever you want to talk about this. The ACC was chief among those pounding the drum to not expand the playoffs because they didn't want more SEC teams in or whatever. And this is where it bit them in the butt. And there's a great deal of irony to me, too, with Florida State, who acted like petulant children at the beginning of the season, now are getting punished at the end of it because of one injury to a key player. And so there is some poetic justice to it. It doesn't make it right, but it is funny in some level. It's not funny if you're an ACC fan, but it is, as an outside observer, it's interesting. I'll put it that way. Any chance we see Jacob Cruz playing time at linebacker in the bowl game? Yeah, think so. What if the basketball team isn't up and down? Are you impressed with what CDS has them doing? James Farmer has them looking like, yeah, I think they have an offensive scheme. I think their scheme makes sense. The thing that I'm most impressed with, and I was talking about this with Tech's legendary basketball SID, Mike Stamus, after the game. They have like length across the court, really, other than the point guard position, and even they can get longer at that spot. But like, Duke had problems; they were long and getting stretched out. And when you had Ndongo and EB in the game, and you had Wasey and Miles Kelly, that was a like NBA sized roster, like in terms of length, pretty much. Like that's the first time they probably had that at Georgia Tech since 2009, maybe, or 2010. The season with Favors and Shump and Lawal, that was the last time they had like a really long team that could defend like that. And it was interesting to see it. It's the thing that I wish Josh had done forever. It's just get guys who are long and can shoot threes, like, and can stretch the floor, like, and they have that now. So I think it's really exciting to see that. In your experience, are coaches usually aware of players' decisions to enter the portal ahead of time, weeks, months, or are they usually finding out the same time we do? It is all over the place. Sometimes, a lot of times they know, like with Jameer Gibbs, for example, that was pretty well known. But like Kyle Kennard, they didn't know. There was one that there have been a couple, even going back before the portal, that I knew Vad Lee was leaving in 2013, and told Paul Johnson he didn't believe me at first, and that was in the middle of the season. Like I had caught wind of what was going on. I was like, hey man, heads up, this is what's going on. And obviously he had to go down to play, but that was it's all over the place, to answer your question. Most of the time they know though. Any word on us bringing in Zach Arnett? Be interesting. I don't know. I don't know what Zach Arnett's going to do. He's an interesting personality, interesting dude, very different. I'm curious where he lands. I think he's a very good defensive coach, but I don't know if that was like them having good horses. And he worked for Rocky Long. He's very sound on the defensive end. I would have no issue with that, but I have no issue if he wants to give Kevin Shearer a fair try. It's not my place to tell Brent what to do, or he knows the inner workings of his team better than I do. So he would know why and the what of what's going on. All right, it's pre-bowl season in December. Like you said, please tell us Paul Johnson's nickname for Jeff Collins. We've been waiting all year for this. I feel like maybe like that's the post-bowl game show, which would be like December 12th, be the it'd be Saturday, December 23rd. Maybe I'll do it then. It is very much something that makes me laugh whenever I even think of what he called them, because it is so funny, and it just is the perfect description of Jeff Collins. How many transfers do you think the staff will be surprised by? One or two. There's always one or two. Out of all the portal offers sent out that may have been sent out, who would be your top get? I don't know. I'm still kind of digesting what's going on in the portal. I would really like to see them get a dynamic tight end to kind of complement the passing game, and that gets used a little bit more as Haynes gets better able to see the field. You saw him working in the tight ends a little bit more as the season went along, but I still think there's more that can be plucked there, especially in the middle of the field. And I think he's got to learn how to work that. What does a bowl win do for our program, even though it's one of the lower tiered bowls? You have a winning season for the first time since 2018. It gives Brent something to sell. You won 7 games. It's a great season. Just going to a bowl game right now is a great season, given where they were coming from and the schedule that they had at the beginning of the season. Could GT be a top 35-40 team next year going into next season if they beat UCF by 15 to 20 points? I don't think it has anything to do with it. I think it has to do with how Brent Key fills the holes he has in his roster and fills out his staff. I think that's going to be the bigger piece of it. Aaron Philo went off last week. 477 passing yards, with most of that coming in the first half of the semifinal game. I'm looking forward to seeing him on the flats. I've been really impressed with both kids. Graham Knowles, the one thing with him is he's got to be more consistent throw to throw. I think he's more inconsistent. I think Philo's a little more ready to go, but that doesn't mean anything. When they get in here, they got to compete and try to push Zach Pyron and Haynes King in that order if they have to, as they push up, to try to get on the field. And I don't know what'll happen, but I think they have a chance to have maybe the best QB room in a really long time at Georgia Tech, and that's exciting. Could Haynes King find himself on the preseason Heisman watch list with a good performance against UCF? I guess. I never know what goes into those lists, man. Like, they're random as hell. Who will Coach O'Leary be cheering for in the bowl game? Brent answered this question as media presser, and I didn't put it in the notes, but he said, hell yes, he will be on my side for the game. Things did not end super great at UCF either for O'Leary. So, like, and he's around this program now, and this is Brent's his guy. He's going to be cheering for Georgia Tech. Kelly, we went to the Cuse game. We saw a lot of players without pads on the sidelines away from the team. What's up with that? Those are guys who are redshirting or not in the game. You don't dress out everyone. Brent's not about, trying to coddle people. The guys who are dressed out are the ones that are in the game plan, or at least emergency players. Everyone else doesn't dress out. Are we keeping Tillman? No idea. Like I said, the whole defensive staff could be completely – I would be shocked if it was completely back. I think you could have most of it back, but I think you could have multiple changes too. It just depends on what Brent decides to do there. I think you should get a sponsor and put their logo behind you for the show. That reminds me, I will have an ad read next week, and I do have a sponsor for the show. So more coming on that. I just got to work up the script with them and build out what I want to do for it. Does GT beat UCF? Bowl games are hard as hell to predict, man. I've won a bowl pool a couple times. It is very difficult to get them right, like, because you just don't know. Does Damon Sauermeyer land in the top 5 basketball crews recording right now? We'll see. Those are hardest because that's generally a pro money situational combination of things. And so he needs some proof of concept here to help. One last hypothetical question, being realistic. If you could develop GT football into the football factory levels, how long would it take? 15 years, 20? No, you could do it in 5-6 years, but you would need a serious investment. Any chance West will be on the play-by-play for the game? He has been the good luck charm. I haven't gotten the email. I'd have to dig through the email. I used to have the email that had the bowl, or maybe ESPN hadn't sent it out yet. The bowl has like all the bowl games and who's calling what. I think they'll probably send that out tomorrow, so I don't know. Yes, we will. I will. That'll be my Christmas gift to you guys. I will tell you the Jeff Collins nickname that Paul Johnson gave him. This is one of my favorite stories. Do I like what Coach Brent Key is doing? Yeah, I think Brent's doing a great job. I think he's executing his plan. He's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. And on top of that, he's a good guy. And, like, he's trying to do things the right way as best he can. And it's very difficult because you're not going to please everybody. You think, like Zach Pyron went through a tough year this year, I'm sure, for him. But he understood, like, watching Haynes play. Like, I think it sunk in. But it was a tough emotional time for, like, someone like him or his family, or guys that are redshirting, or Leo Blackburn who got hurt and dealing with all of these things, or even like sitting Ethan McKinney for the betterment of the team down the stretch and playing Corey Robinson. Like, all of those things, he's mostly making the right moves. Obviously I think he made a mistake with the defensive coordinator decision. If you weren't going to, I think whatever that magic was, like you had to keep that all together or blow it all up, and he kept it together partially instead of blowing it all up and starting over. Do I think Florida State saying they were leaving the ACC hurt them with the college football committee? Might have hurt, pissed off Boo. I don't know. Like they might have been getting punished. I'm not one to say that, but I don't think it helped them being jerks. I don't know. Nobody wants to admit it, but I think the secondary played better with Thack back there, and they played with him under, and they played well with him under there. Is there any chance he stays in that role? I would be pretty surprised if I love Andrew. He is a tremendous human being. He's one of the nicest people that I've dealt with in this business. He is very honest. He was as excited as anybody when they beat Syracuse. Like when they've won games, he's been very sweet to me. Like over the years, and I think he's a good recruiter and has great rapport with kids. But Brent's got to do what's best for the program. That's not for me to answer. I do agree that I thought the secondary played better when they made that switch, but is it because of that? Is it because of changes Kevin Shearer made? Is it because of something they told Tillman to do? I don't know. What question should we be asking about the portal, the best player in the nation that transfers? I'm super curious. I don't know who's going to be like the Keon Coleman, basically, right? Like Keon Coleman was the X Factor transfer this past offseason. I don't know who that guy is right now. And Keon Coleman, that's a great story, but he also probably didn't help Florida State's playoff chances. He dropped 2 huge balls in that game that maybe make that offense look a little less terrible. So that was kind of ironic. Do we get any good surprises in recruiting in football this year? I think so. There's some stuff going on. There was one pretty interesting secret visitor this weekend. There's some fun stuff coming. Russell will be able to unfold some of that stuff as he's able to, but we're trying to work everything the best way we can. So what's something that you can tell us no one has asked Georgia Tech related? I don't know. Apparently, the game the other night was the first time that Georgia Tech has stormed the court since it became McCamish Pavilion, so that was interesting. Why last-minute bowl switches? I think it had a lot to do with some bowl partners not being excited about certain matchups. I know we touched on Tillman, but not one player or recruit has talked him up, and we lost when we were losing early in the season. Blah, blah, blah. He gone, in my opinion. Tillman has not lit it up in recruiting. I'll put it that way. But, his guys, Amari Harvey's been a great story. Kenan Johnson, they've got a lot out of him. Rod Shelley's, started to play well. He's had some tangible results, but, it would be interesting to measure all of that, and I'm sure that's something that Brent's doing. Do you think the basketball team is good enough to make a postseason NIT tournament? Maybe. I think that's sort of the high end of what they could do. I don't know. Does Coleman stay as a defensive line coach? Brent Key loves Marco Coleman. And Marco's done a pretty good job. I would say that given what he was working with, he's done a really good job. They were completely flummoxed when they lost Sylvain, their best defensive lineman, 26 snaps into the Louisville game. So, yeah, I think, I would assume Marco stays. We'll see. What would who recruited Troy Stevenson if not Tillman? Who recruited Troy Stevenson? That I don't remember. I feel like that was Marco's area. Thack and Tillman recruited Troy Stevenson. Troy Stevenson's also 5'9". So he's a very good defensive back. He's a little undersized. What would you define as a successful season for the basketball team this year? Finishing like 11th or better in the ACC, I think, would be a good start. I am not. You guys get way too up and way too down on the basketball team. Everyone was like, the sky is falling. We lost to Cincinnati by 30 points and we're down 40. And then they beat Duke and Mississippi State. We're going to the tournament. It's neither of those things. Like, they're in between. They're a young team that's learning how to play. Like, it's going to be an up and down year. I think if he could repeat sort of what Josh did his first year and maybe get into the NIT, that would be cool. That'd be a good story. How much money is Auburn dropping on these recruits? Probably the same money they used to drop above the board. Oh, sorry, I didn't say that. Allegedly dropped above board, when they built Cam Newton's dad's church. Can we have a war room before early signing day? Yes. Was Jeep Wade the most important position hire this year? I would say it would be Buster Faulkner and then Jeep Wade. Nate George reminds me a bit of Alvarado. Yeah, not as gifted defensively, but his passing is actually probably a hair better than Jose's in a way at this point. They both got that swag, though, which you like from the point guard. I think that's what turned on Damon when he saw him play this summer. Any comment on the Middle Tennessee portal guys? Didn't one of them go somewhere else already? This is where I would like to bring Russell on, but I haven't set that up yet. That's coming. I just need like a few minutes to actually work on this. How do I feel about Norvell McKenzie? I love his social media posts. I think he's great on social media. I've enjoyed talking to him. The few interactions I've had with him have been really good. A lot of the kids I've talked to in recruiting seem to like him. He seems like a sharp dude. I think he was an upgrade at that spot. Alvarado's a better shooter. Alvarado became a better shooter. Nate's actually a pretty good shooter right now. He might be better normally than Alvarado was out of the box. Jose worked really hard on his game the whole time he was at Georgia Tech. If you guys remember, he missed like 29 straight threes at one point. Position-wise, not coordinator, but yeah, okay. Russell gave the crystal ball for the O-lineman. Okay. What the hell happened with Mike Daniels last year? I have never gotten like a full straight story on what happened. I like Mike Daniels. He was a really good dude. He's been very nice to me. I would not want to speculate on what happened in a public forum. That's something maybe if like we have a get together, I can bring up sometime. Will we get a 5-star this year? A 5-star out of high school? Probably not. Russell would have to stay awake to bring him in. That was very epic. I don't generally watch Russell's Q&A thing or look at it because that's his time to do his thing. And that's sort of like my break when he does that too. Like I know I can kind of go chill out, do other stuff. And yes, stinker butt Russell. And I just got a text from one of the subs and was like, hey, I forget what he said. It was something. He alerted to me the fact that Russell just like stopped responding, and I was like, oh, he fell asleep. I was like, I guarantee he fell asleep. He fell asleep, and like he's gonna be embarrassed as crap when he wakes up tomorrow and sees what happened, or he wakes up in the middle of the night. And yep, that's what happened. He gets. Russell works hard. Russell has 2 jobs. Like Russell works as a hustler, and that's exhausting for him. So yeah, it's hard. All right, folks, we went 1 hour and 3. I'm going to go hang out with my wife for a little bit and decompress. We got basketball media tomorrow. And then we might have some bowl. I don't know what they'll do with bowl stuff yet. They haven't even figured it out yet themselves, but stay tuned on that. So appreciate everyone joining me. Tell your friends, join Jackets Online. Give the gift of Jackets Online to your cheap bastard friends. Like on my signature on the website, there's always a spot where you can click on it and it says at the bottom of my signature that give the gift of rivals. Do that and spread the word, grow our site, and get Russell out from working 2 jobs to 1 job. Like that'd be a nice goal for next year. So thanks everybody. Be good.